Have you ever felt like this? Like you're drowning in a sea of to-dos, deadlines looming, yet you can't seem to bring yourself to actually start? You scroll through social media, tidy your already tidy desk, maybe even decide it is a good idea to start learning a new language, anything but tackle the task at hand. That, my friends, is procrastination in its most insidious form. We've all been there, haven't we? This subtle, creeping feeling that we have chosen to delay something, even though that delay may cause us some type of stress later. It's like a dark cloud hanging over our heads, draining our energy and stealing our peace of mind. Procrastination isn't just about being lazy, despite what some may say. It's far more complex, a tangled web of emotions, fears, and habits that can hold us captive if we let them. It whispers doubts in our ears, convincing us that we're not good enough, that we'll fail, or that the task is simply too overwhelming to even begin. And so we stay stuck, trapped in a cycle of inaction, watching our goals and dreams drift further and further away. But what if I told you it doesn't have to be this way? What if I told you that buried deep within you is the power to break free from this cycle, to silence that inner critic, and to finally take control of your life? It might feel impossible right now, especially when you're in the thick of it, but trust me, overcoming procrastination isn't about some magical cure-all. It's about understanding how your mind works and making conscious, deliberate choices to change your habits. It's a journey, a process of self-discovery, and it's one that's absolutely worth taking. The ancient Stoics, those masters of self-discipline, knew a thing or two about this. They understood that true freedom comes not from controlling the world around us, but from mastering our own minds. As the great Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This wisdom is the key to unlocking a life of action, a life where you're no longer a slave to procrastination, but the master of your own destiny. In the next few minutes, we're going to embark on a journey together, a journey to reclaim your time, your focus, and your power. We'll explore the roots of procrastination, uncover the hidden forces that drive it, and equip you with practical, actionable strategies to break free. So, take a deep breath, open your mind, and get ready to transform your life, from procrastination to action. Let's begin. We often label ourselves or others as lazy when procrastination strikes. But if we truly dig deeper, we'll find that laziness is rarely the real culprit. It's a convenient label, a mask that hides a much more complex reality. Procrastination at its core is not a time management problem. It's an emotional regulation problem. Think about the last time you put something off. Chances are, you weren't simply being lazy. You were likely grappling with some underlying negative emotions. Maybe you were feeling overwhelmed by the sheer size of the task. Perhaps you were anxious about the possibility of failing or even succeeding. Let's talk about that for a moment, the fear factor. It's a powerful force, often lurking beneath the surface, sabotaging our best intentions. We fear failure, that we'll put in all this effort only to fall short of our expectations. The fear of judgment, that others will criticize our work or question our abilities. And sometimes, believe it or not, we even fear success. What if we achieve our goal and then can't maintain it? What if it changes our lives in ways we're not prepared for? These fears, often unspoken and unacknowledged, create a sense of inner turmoil. A turmoil that makes it easier to simply avoid the task altogether than to confront these uncomfortable feelings. And then there's perfectionism, that relentless pursuit of flawlessness that can be so paralyzing. The perfectionist in us sets impossibly high standards, demanding that everything be just right before we even begin. We tell ourselves that we need the perfect plan, the perfect resources, the perfect moment. But of course, perfect rarely exists in the real world. This striving for an unattainable ideal becomes a convenient excuse to delay, to avoid the risk of imperfection. We become so focused on getting it right that we never get started at all. It's like waiting for all the traffic lights to turn green before starting your journey. You'll be waiting forever. So you see, procrastination is rarely about laziness. It's a coping mechanism, a way to avoid dealing with these difficult emotions. It is choosing short-term comfort by avoiding doing the task over long-term satisfaction, which is achieved by doing the task. The problem is that this avoidance only makes things worse. The task doesn't go away. The emotions don't magically disappear. Instead, they fester and grow, creating a vicious cycle that's even harder to break. The weight of unfinished tasks, missed deadlines, and the constant feeling of being behind, it adds to our stress levels. It creates a sense of guilt and shame, further fueling the negative emotions that drive procrastination in the first place. It's a trap, and one that can feel incredibly difficult to escape. But understanding these roots, recognizing that procrastination is a symptom of a deeper emotional struggle, is the first step towards breaking free. It's about acknowledging these fears and anxieties, not as weaknesses, but as normal human experiences. So, how do we break free from this emotional trap? The ancient Stoics, despite living thousands of years ago, offered a surprisingly relevant solution. Focus on what you can control and let go of what you can't. You can't control the outcome of your efforts. You can't control how others will react to your work. You can't control whether or not you will succeed or fail. But you can control your actions, your choices, right here, right now, in this present moment. This is where your true power lies. It is not in the worrying of the future or the regretting of the past. Think of it like this. Imagine you're a ship captain. You can't control the wind, the waves, or the storms that may come your way, but you can control the setting of your sails, the direction of your rudder, and the actions of your crew. A skilled captain doesn't waste energy cursing the weather. Instead, they focus on what they can do in that moment to navigate the challenges they face. This is the essence of Stoic wisdom, and it's a powerful antidote to procrastination. But how do we cultivate this ability to focus on the present moment, especially when our minds are constantly pulled towards the anxieties of the future or the regrets of the past? This is where mindfulness comes in. Mindfulness is simply the practice of paying attention on purpose to the present moment without judgment. It's about observing your thoughts, your emotions, and your physical sensations without getting carried away by them. Think of it as a mental exercise that helps you to become more aware of your internal state, including those subtle cues that signal the onset of procrastination. When you practice mindfulness, you start to notice the patterns. You begin to recognize the triggers, the thoughts and feelings that lead you down the path of avoidance. Maybe it's a feeling of overwhelm that arises when you look at your to-do list. Perhaps it's a critical inner voice that whispers doubts about your abilities. Whatever it is, mindfulness helps you to see these triggers for what they are. Simply thoughts and feelings, not facts. And when you recognize them, you create space to choose a different response. You are no longer hijacked by your emotions. You can choose to acknowledge the feeling without letting it dictate your actions. This is what developing a now habit is all about. It's about training yourself to act in the present moment, instead of waiting for the perfect time, the perfect mood, or the perfect circumstances. Because let's be honest, perfect never arrives. There will always be something that's not quite right, some reason to delay, some excuse to put things off until tomorrow. But now is always available. Right now, you can choose to take one small step, however imperfect, towards your goal. You don't have to wait for motivation to strike. Motivation often comes after action, not before. The now habit is about understanding that action itself is a powerful motivator. Now that we understand the power of now, let's talk about how to actually put it into practice. One of the most effective techniques for overcoming that initial inertia, that resistance to starting, is something I call the 5-minute rule. It's deceptively simple yet incredibly powerful. Here's how it works. Commit to working on the task you've been putting off for just 5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes. You can do anything for 5 minutes, right? The beauty of this rule lies in its ability to bypass the emotional resistance that fuels procrastination. 5 minutes feels manageable, even when you're facing a task that you've been dreading. It's a low enough bar that even your inner critic can't argue with it. And more often than not, what you'll find is that once you get started, once you overcome that initial hurdle, it's much easier to keep going. You build momentum, like a snowball rolling downhill, gathering speed and size as it goes. The 5-minute rule is not about tricking yourself into doing more than you intend to. It is about tricking your brain out of the fear that causes procrastination. But what about those tasks that feel too big, too complex, too overwhelming, even for 5 minutes? This is where the strategy of breaking down tasks comes into play. Imagine you have to write a book. That's a huge undertaking, right? It's the kind of thing that can easily trigger procrastination. But what if, instead of focusing on the entire book, you broke it down into chapters? Then break down each chapter into sections, then each section into paragraphs, and each paragraph into sentences. Suddenly, the task feels much more manageable. Instead of writing a book, you're now focused on writing one sentence. And that's something you can do, right? This is the power of breaking down tasks. It's about taking something that feels overwhelming and transforming it into a series of smaller, more approachable steps. Each step builds upon the last, creating a sense of progress and accomplishment that fuels your motivation to keep going. You are no longer trying to climb a mountain in a single leap. You are building a staircase, one step at a time. And this brings us to the crucial element of this whole process: consistency. It's not about grand gestures or heroic efforts. It's about showing up day after day and taking those small steps, however imperfect they may be. Consistency is the secret weapon of highly effective people. It's the understanding that real, lasting progress is the result of small, consistent actions over time. It's like the slow, steady drip of water that eventually carves through stone. It might not look like much at first, but over time it can create something truly remarkable. Think of it like building a muscle. You don't go to the gym once, lift the heaviest weight you can find, and expect to be ripped the next day. No, you start small, you lift consistently, and gradually, over time, you increase the weight. Your muscles adapt, they grow stronger, and eventually, you're able to lift far more than you ever thought possible. The same principle applies to overcoming procrastination. Every time you choose to act, even in a small way, you're strengthening your action muscle. And finally, perhaps, most importantly, remember to celebrate your progress. Acknowledge your wins, no matter how small they may seem. Did you spend 5 minutes working on that task you've been avoiding? That's a win. Did you break down a large project into smaller steps? That's a win. Did you show up today and do the work, even when you didn't feel like it? That's a huge win. These small victories are the building blocks of lasting change. They deserve to be recognized and appreciated. When you take the time to acknowledge your progress, you're not just patting yourself on the back. You're reinforcing the positive behavior, making it more likely that you'll repeat it in the future. You're creating a positive feedback loop where action leads to accomplishment, which leads to motivation, which leads to more action. This is how you build momentum, how you transform your life from one of procrastination to one of action. Remember this: every step you take, no matter how small, is a step away from procrastination and a step towards the life you want to live. Now, let's address something that often goes hand in hand with procrastination: the fear of failure. It's a fear that can be so powerful, so debilitating that it prevents us from even trying. But what if we could change our relationship with failure? What if, instead of seeing it as something to be avoided at all costs, we saw it as an inevitable, even valuable part of the process? The Stoics, as with many things, had a unique perspective on this. They understood that setbacks, obstacles, and even failures are not only inevitable, but are necessary parts of life. They believed that it's not the events themselves that cause us suffering, but our judgments about those events. In other words, it's not failure itself that's the problem. It's how we perceive it. When you view failure as a catastrophe, as a reflection of your inadequacy, of course, you're going to want to avoid it. Think of it like this: every time you try something and it doesn't work out the way you intended, you're not failing. You're learning. You're gathering information, figuring out what works and what doesn't. You are getting valuable data that will help you to course correct, to refine your approach, and to ultimately increase your chances of success. Thomas Edison, The inventor of the light bulb famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That's the mindset we're talking about. It's about seeing failure not as a roadblock but as a stepping stone. This perspective aligns perfectly with what modern psychology calls a growth mindset. This is the belief that our abilities and intelligence are not fixed, but can be developed through dedication and hard work. When you have a growth mindset, you embrace challenges, you persist in the face of setbacks, and you see effort as the path to mastery. You understand that failure is not a sign of weakness, but an opportunity to learn and grow. It's a chance to become better, stronger, and more resilient. But embracing failure, even seeing it as feedback, doesn't mean it's always easy. It still stings. We're still human. This is where self-compassion comes in. It's about treating yourself with the same kindness, understanding, and care that you would offer a close friend who was struggling. It's about acknowledging that you're doing your best, that you're human, and that it's okay to make mistakes. When you're kind to yourself, when you offer yourself encouragement and support instead of harsh criticism, you create a safe space to learn and grow. You're more likely to pick yourself up after a setback, dust yourself off, and try again, because you know that failure doesn't define you. It's simply a part of the journey. We've talked about mindset shifts and internal strategies, but let's be honest, sometimes we need to make changes to our external environment as well. We need to set ourselves up for success, and that's where creating an action-oriented environment comes in. Think of it like this. If you're trying to eat healthier, you wouldn't fill your kitchen with junk food, right? The same principle applies to procrastination. If you want to be more productive, you need to create an environment that supports that goal. First things first, let's talk about distractions. We live in a world of constant stimulation, notifications, emails, social media, all vying for our attention. These distractions are the enemies of focus, and they are procrastination's best friends. To combat this, we need to become ruthless about eliminating distractions. Start by identifying your biggest time wasters. What are the things that tend to pull you away from your work? Once you know your culprits, you can start to create boundaries. Turn off notifications on your phone, or better yet, put it in another room while you're working. Use website blockers to prevent yourself from accessing distracting sites during work hours. Close unnecessary tabs on your computer. Create a dedicated workspace that's free from clutter and distractions. If you can, let the people around you know that you need uninterrupted time to focus. The key here is to be intentional about it. Don't just hope that you'll be able to resist temptation. Take proactive steps to remove temptation altogether. Next, let's explore the power of time blocking. This is a technique where you schedule specific blocks of time for specific tasks in your day. Instead of just having a to-do list, you actually allocate time in your calendar for each item. For example, instead of just writing work on project, you might schedule 9:00 a.m. to 11:00 a.m. work on project X. When you do this, a few things happen. First, you're forced to prioritize. You have to decide which tasks are most important and allocate your time accordingly. Second, you create a sense of urgency and focus. When you know you only have a specific amount of time to work on something, you're more likely to stay on track and avoid distractions. And finally, you create a visual representation of your day, making it easier to see how you're spending your time and to make adjustments if necessary. Now let's talk about the power of accountability. It's one thing to set goals for yourself, but it's another thing entirely to have someone else holding you to them. This is where an accountability partner can be incredibly helpful. An accountability partner can be a friend, a colleague, a mentor, or even a family member. The key is that it's someone you trust and respect, someone who will support you but also challenge you to stay on track. Share your goals with your accountability partner and set up regular check-ins to discuss your progress. Knowing that someone else is aware of your goals and will be checking in on your progress creates an extra layer of motivation. It's a way of adding positive social pressure, making it harder to let yourself off the hook. Many people are more likely to follow through on something if they know someone else is counting on them. Finally, let's not forget about the power of rewards. Remember how we talked about reinforcing positive behavior? Rewards are a great way to do that. When you set a goal for yourself, whether it's completing a task, sticking to your time blocks, or simply showing up and doing the work, pair it with a reward. The reward doesn't have to be big or expensive. It could be something as simple as taking a break to enjoy a cup of coffee, going for a walk, or watching an episode of your favorite show. The key is that the reward should be something you genuinely enjoy and that it should be contingent on completing the task. This creates a positive association in your brain between effort and reward, making it more likely that you'll repeat the desired behavior in the future. It is important, however, to make sure the reward is not counterproductive to your overall goals. Over time, as you start to build momentum and see progress, the sense of accomplishment itself will become its own reward. But in the beginning, these external rewards can be a powerful way to reinforce positive habits and keep you motivated. We've covered a lot of ground in this journey, exploring the roots of procrastination, the power of the present moment, and practical strategies for taking action. But it's important to remember that overcoming procrastination is not just about becoming more productive. It is not just about checking off more to-dos or meeting more deadlines. It's about something much bigger, much more meaningful. It's about building a life of action, a life aligned with your values and your purpose. When you start to conquer procrastination, you're not just reclaiming your time, you're reclaiming your life. You're taking back control from those inner forces that have held you captive, and you're stepping into your power as the conscious creator of your own destiny. And this, my friends, is where the real magic happens. When your actions are aligned with your purpose, everything changes. Think about what truly matters to you. What are the values that you hold dear? What is the impact that you want to make on the world? When you have a clear sense of your why, your purpose, taking action becomes less of a struggle and more of a natural expression of who you are. You're no longer just trying to get things done. You're working towards something that truly matters to you. You're building a life that is not only productive, but also meaningful and fulfilling. And here's another beautiful thing about overcoming procrastination. It creates a ripple effect. It's like tossing a pebble into a pond. The initial impact may seem small, but the ripples extend outward, touching every area of your life. When you start to take action in one area, you build momentum, confidence, and self-trust. And that spills over into other areas. You start to show up more fully in your relationships, in your work, in your personal pursuits. You become more engaged, more present, more alive. But it's important to remember that this is a long game. Conquering procrastination is not a one-time fix. It's an ongoing journey. It's a practice, a way of being that requires continuous effort and refinement. There will be days when you slip up, when you fall back into old habits. That's okay. It's part of the process. The key is to keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving to become a better version of yourself. The Stoics understood this. They knew that the path to wisdom and virtue was not a sprint, but a marathon. It required perseverance, self-discipline, and a willingness to keep going even when things got tough. As Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." And Epictetus, another great Stoic, reminds us, "No great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me that you desire a fig, I answer you that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen." These words of wisdom are not just abstract ideas. They are practical tools for navigating the challenges of life. They remind us that true, lasting change takes time, effort, and a willingness to stay committed to the path, even when we stumble. Overcoming procrastination is a lifelong journey. It requires continuous self-awareness, a willingness to confront your inner demons, and a commitment to taking action, even when you don't feel like it. But the rewards, my friends, are immeasurable. So here we are, at the end of our journey, together. We've explored the depths of procrastination, unearthed its hidden roots, and discovered powerful strategies to break free from its grip. Let's take a moment to recap the key ideas that will guide you on your path to action. Remember, procrastination is not about laziness. It's about emotional regulation. It's about acknowledging and addressing the fears, anxieties, and perfectionistic tendencies that keep you stuck. We learned that focusing on what you can control, your actions in the present moment, is the key to unlocking your power. We talked about the 5-minute rule, breaking down tasks, and the power of consistency. Small steps, taken consistently, lead to big wins. We reframed failure as feedback, a valuable opportunity for learning and growth. And we explored how to create an action-oriented environment by eliminating distractions, utilizing time blocking, finding an accountability partner, and leveraging the power of rewards. But most importantly, we connected all of this to the bigger picture, to the idea of building a life of purpose, a life where your actions are aligned with your values. This is a journey, an ongoing process of growth and self-discovery. And now it's your turn to take action. Don't let this be just another video you watch and then forget about. Choose one thing, one small step that you can take today, right? Now, to move from procrastination to action, maybe it's setting a timer for 5 minutes and working on that task you've been avoiding. Perhaps it's breaking down a daunting project into smaller, more manageable steps. Or maybe it's simply taking a moment to reflect on your values and identify one action you can take today that aligns with them. Whatever it is, do it now. Start small, be consistent, and celebrate your progress along the way. You have the power within you to overcome procrastination and create a life of action, a life of purpose, a life that is truly fulfilling. It won't always be easy, but I promise you it will be worth it. Embrace the journey, trust in yourself, and never give up on your potential. The world needs your unique talents, your gifts, your contributions, and the only way to share them is to take action. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with others who might benefit. And remember, the path to a more fulfilling life begins with a single step. Take that step today. Now go out there and make it happen. I'll see you in the next video.